Good morning, friends, and welcome to Chapter a Day. So today you get to see in my chapter Garrett's Indian Scout, which is actually my Indian Scout, and I'll show you a picture of me on it. You can see that. It's a beautiful bike. And as I indicated yesterday, it's one that I got after my mom died, and I love. So I like incorporating into my stories some of that. I will tell you, I was reading over Chapter 7, which is our chapter for today, and sometimes I am just appalled by how my verbiage sounds when I'm reading it. I'm wincing on the inside, so I will try to read what's written here. And please forgive the fact that when this went to the editor, I hadn't read it out loud, and I have sworn to myself I will never make that mistake again. So, without further ado, we get to see Garrett meeting Poppy, and today's chapter Day from Home Again is Chapter 7. Poppy Hanson knew she was in trouble when she saw the lone man on a red, white, and blue motorcycle with a gold Indian head on the tank pull up in front of her cottage. He was tall, dressed all in black with red piping on his leather jacket and the word Indian in red script across the front. A bigger logo in red was on the back. His helmet, a full-face, futuristic-looking thing, was also red, white, and blue. His glasses were mirrored, obscuring his eyes. When he took the glasses and then the helmet off and pierced her with his narrow-eyed stare, Poppy's heart stopped beating for a second before restarting painfully in her chest. Astrid appeared at her side. "Who's that, Mama?" "Trouble, honey. All kinds of trouble," Poppy said, unable to take her eyes off the man slowly lumbering to her front porch. Astrid, perhaps sensing her mother's discomfort, or perhaps just exercising her natural inclination toward curiosity and protection, stepped in front of her mother and met the man at the screen porch. He stopped on the concrete wall, just in front of the 3 steps leading to the screen door. They were nearly the same height, but Astrid had a few inches on him until he came up to the first step. She enjoyed looking down at him almost as much as she enjoyed the way he looked. "Are you trouble?" Astrid asked, cocking her head to one side, honestly interested. Garrett Oakley wasn't sure what he expected when he rode up to Poppy's cottage. He didn't know what he was going to say to her or to his father. He knew he felt a kind of self-righteous anger he had no business feeling, but wanted to take out on Poppy anyway, mainly because he was fairly certain she'd give it right back to him. The girl she had been was like that, fearless, self-confident. She certainly didn't take any crap from overbearing males. What he didn't expect was a hesitant Poppy guarded by an avenging mini-me version of Poppy. He knew she had a daughter. Leif had mentioned his niece more than once on every occasion Garrett was home. More than the little one's wide-eyed bravery, it was Poppy's timidity that threw Garrett. He didn't like it. He wanted a good fight. He didn't want an adversary who looked like he'd somehow managed to slap her from 5 feet away. That thought made his blood boil. He knew she was divorced. Leif had told him that too. What Leif hadn't told him was that Poppy's ex-husband had hit her. Maybe Leif didn't know. If he had, he would have dealt with it. Leif was easygoing, engaging almost to a fault, but he would never allow anyone to physically abuse either of his sisters. Garrett knew that without asking Leif about it. He knew that because if he'd been lucky enough to have a sibling, he'd have beaten anyone who hurt them. In that, he and Leif were the same. Garrett looked at the brave little girl and answered honestly, "Yes, I can be trouble. I've been a great deal of trouble lately." Then he looked from the little girl straight into her improbably large blue eyes and said something from his heart. "I'm not here to hurt your mom." Then Garrett looked directly at Poppy. "I will never hurt your mom." Something flashed in Poppy's eyes, something that reminded him of the fire she used to wear around her like a slow-moving, invisible tornado. It warmed those lucky enough to be included in its sphere, and kept out all she deemed unworthy with equal aplomb. He wasn't exactly in that sphere of warmth, but the fire that flashed in Poppy warmed him anyway. The little one caught his attention. "I don't think you look like trouble," she said, opening the screen door. Garrett stayed where he was. There was no way he was going in without an explicit invitation from Poppy. He was enjoying her daughter, though, which surprised him. He'd studied child psychology, but he never really had much contact with children. "Really?" he asked, surprised. He thought he looked pretty badass in his leather. His hair was too long and he hadn't shaved in a week. "What do you think I look like?" She grinned at him, not missing a beat. She said, "Captain America! You look like a long-haired Captain America." Well, hell, Garrett thought. Suddenly he felt 7 feet tall. He liked this kid, he really did. Out of the corner of his eye, Garrett saw it, a golden flash of movement that ran straight for him. He held absolutely still, as the whirlwind ran 2 circles around his legs, barked once, and then ran up the stairs and directly into Poppy's house through the screen door still being held open by her daughter. Poppy jumped back. "Astrid, close that door!" Garrett thought, that's right. Leif's niece's name was Astrid. For some reason, he thought it was a flower name, like the rest of the Hansons. Aster was the name that popped into his head. He liked Astrid much better. It suited the tiny Valkyrie, now grinning from ear to ear. She jumped up and down. "Can I keep him, Mama? Can we keep him?" Astrid squealed. Garrett looked up at Poppy through the screen door. Her shoulders slumped and she was rubbing her forehead and her left eye as if she was trying to will away a headache. She'd forgotten about him with the arrival of this new trouble in the form of a smelly, unkempt dog. Something about being dismissed by Poppy irked him. Something about Astrid's protectiveness intrigued him. Something about Poppy's blue eyes and the new lines at the corners of her eyes made him want to hold her and tell her everything was going to be all right. Even though he still wanted to shake her, or rather shake the old Poppy, who could have taken it, for sending Glory any of his private history. He felt all of that contradictory emotion, which boiled down to the fact that he was enjoying himself and he didn't want to leave. When he had to, he wanted an excuse to return. "I could come up and help you wrangle the dog," Garrett offered. Poppy jolted, standing straight up. The dog was now running laps through the house, stopping when it came near Astrid to lean down and give a quick yep before dodging out of sight and doing it all over again. A crash, quickly followed by what sounded like shattering glass, had Poppy opening the screen door to let him in. Garrett bounded up the 3 stairs and entered Poppy's cottage before she could change her mind. The porch was welcoming with its 2 love-seat-sized swings, rattan cocktail table, and an oval throw rug. Garrett stood at the threshold looking into the open-concept family room and kitchen area. The dog was sitting next to a broken vase, tongue out, smiling at him. Garrett couldn't help smiling back. He was going to name this creature Mayhem. He slapped the side of his leg and said, "Come," expecting nothing from the thoroughly disheveled, probably flea-infested little thing. Mayhem came, though, right to his side. The dog sat and looked up at him expectantly with golden brown eyes, twice as intelligent than they should have been. If Garrett didn't know better, he would have sworn the creature winked at him. He tried not to look surprised when he turned to Poppy. She smiled at him. She put her hand to her chest and said with sarcasm dripping from every pore as she battered her eyelashes at him, "My hero." In that second, he wanted to be. He wanted it with a sudden heat he'd never felt for another woman. A heat she lit without trying. A heat he'd run away from if he had any sense at all. He didn't run. He executed a perfect courtier bow, which would have been unmanly in the extreme in any other place or time. Dressed as he was, smelling faintly of gasoline, he was pretty sure he nailed the manliness of it all. Poppy laughed. Astrid giggled and ran to his other side, hugging him. Mayhem looked up at him like he was now the center of the universe. That was the moment he knew he'd inherited the damn dog, and he'd do anything to keep that smile on Poppy's face and the sound of Astrid's giggle in his heart. Poppy came up to him, leaned over to survey the damage Mayhem had done in her kitchen. She had a calculated look in her eye. She was about to tell him the earth was flat, little green men were real, and he had a chance to make it into her bed just as soon as he could prove he belonged there. She didn't say any of those things. Instead, she invited him to dinner. If he could, quote, "get that," she nodded toward Mayhem, "dog out of my house and into yours right now." Garrett turned and walked out of the house, down the stairs, and over to his Indian Scout. He latched the helmet to the hook he had in the back exactly for that purpose. Then he got on the bike and said, "Mayhem, come, jump." And the crazy thing ran straight for him, jumped, and landed right in his lap. When it finally settled, it had a comfortable position, like it had been born to ride. No one was more surprised than Garrett. He hoped he looked like this happened every Tuesday, no big deal. He knew he failed because he could feel the ear-to-ear grin that came of its own accord and didn't want to leave. Poppy looked astonished. Astrid looked excited. She was still jumping at her mom's side, but now she was clapping too, like Garrett really was some kind of superhero come to life just for her. Garrett started the motorcycle. He raised his voice over the rhythmic hum of the motor, surprised again that Mayhem stayed through the whole process. "What time's dinner?" Poppy shook her head at him, slumped her shoulders as she dropped her head. He almost thought she was going to back out. When she raised her head to him, she was grinning, just like Astrid. She hugged her daughter to her side and raised her fingers on her hands, showing 6 of them. "See you at 6, he said, tapping the Scout into first gear, hoping Mayhem didn't jump off until he got home. Mayhem stayed put. Garrett made it the 2 blocks from Poppy's house to his without incident. All was right with the world. Until he saw Poppy's brother, Leif Hansen, sitting on his front porch. So tomorrow we go to chapter 8, and for those of you that have the book, I've got this beautiful little image of Mayhem sprinkled throughout, and that generally tells you Mayhem's going to play a role in that chapter. And I love that little dog, and I hope as we go on you will too. So thanks once again for spending some time with me today. Be well. If you ride well, ride hard. See you tomorrow.